Are we live? Yep. It says we are live. Y'all always know I gotta check my audio and stuff when things first start because it takes a minute for things to kick in on my end. But I wanted to say, what is up, flockers? That is my fellow lockers and aspiring lockers. In today's video, I'm going to be running through some of the pros and cons that are associated with Braidlocs. So if you want to see those, then stick around. I have Braidlocs in my hair. I've been doing Braidlocs for, okay, now I can see myself so I can try to adjust a little bit. I have been on this lock journey for almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in May. So for anyone who may be new to my channel and doesn't know, and I apologize, I'm a little under the weather, but we are going to get through this anyways. So for anyone, like I said, who's new to my channel, who may not know, I'm David J. I have Braidlocs. I will be 2 years locked in May, 2 years on this journey. And I was trying to think of what I wanted the video to be about today, and I decided to go back to my video, my most popular video on my channel, which is the Braidlocs pros and cons video that I did over a year ago. And what's crazy is that this video has popped off and it has really been the catalyst of this channel. It has gotten me the most subscribers. It's got over 18,000 views at the time of this recording. So for a small YouTuber like me, who's under 2,000 subscribers at this point, to have a video that's over 18,000 views is just mind-boggling to me and crazy. Thank all of the flockers for the support. Y'all know I love y'all so much, and like I said, anyone who's new, join the flock. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can join. But I thought it would be kind of cool just to look back on that first video that I did about the pros and cons of Braidlocs and see if I still feel the same, if my pros and cons are the same as they were back then, see if they've changed. You know, within a year, your opinion, your thoughts and processes could have changed. So I wanted to see that. And from the first thing I see from this video, we definitely have some visual changes in the locks. So for all the people who are tired of the cliche and hearing like trust the process, stick in with it. Look at this, y'all. Like, for real. Look at the difference a year makes in your hair length. Like, look at the hang time, the length. If you can really, like, there's some, we'll get more into it as we're dissecting and going through this video. But so much has changed in my hair within the last year. And I just think it's really cool to look back. So I wanted to do that with y'all today. All right, so I got my notes over here with timestamps so that we don't have to watch the whole video or go through it, but I did want to go through some points. All right, so we are going to start with the cons first because I like to get the bad out the way. The first con of starting your locks with braids is that the braid pattern is going to be visible. And when I say visible, I mean visible from a mile away. You're going to be able to see the braid pattern from a long way away. People are going to know they are braids. You're not going to do an installation of braids on day one and then that same day people will be like, oh, you have brother locks or sister locks. All right, so there, my first con being that braid lock pattern is visible from far away. I would say that I still agree with that. Not 2 years into the journey, but in the very beginning when I put those braids in, granted, the smaller your braids are, the more difficult it's going to be for people to see from far away. But when I did first do my installation, because I did it myself, it definitely was visible. People could tell that they were braids. Well, people could tell that they were braids from far away. And, you know, you get those comments like, oh, I love your braids. They look good, stuff like that. So it definitely could be a con to someone if you're expecting to have that locked look from day one, if you're starting with braids, because they will look like braids. And I know that with Sisterlocks or people that start with interlocks, the interlocking pattern can kind of mimic a braid look, especially in the beginning before it starts maturing. So that's just something that you got to think of when it comes to braid locks, is that you are going to have that braid pattern that's going to be visible from far away in the very beginning before your locks start to mature. Okay. So let me go on to con number 2. All right, so con number 2 is that it does take a bit longer for the braids to mature than other methods. Now, the reason for this is that the whole purpose of locking your hair is so that it can swell and expand before it contracts. Okay, so just to paraphrase that point. So number two on my list of cons is, or was and still is, that the braid pattern takes longer to disappear. And I would still say that that is true. I am, what, going on 22 months of this journey, almost 2 years, like I said, and especially around the perimeter where I did them tighter, I definitely do still have braid pattern. It is definitely still visible, not so much to other people, but to me when I'm looking in the mirror, or if, I were to take a selfie or something, when you're looking closely or zoom in, you can see. Now, when you get around to the back of my hair and the sides, the braid pattern has disappeared in a lot more places, but we're 2 years in almost, and we do still have braid pattern. So that is a reality that you have to take into account, that the braid pattern is going to take a lot longer to disappear than if you chose two-strand twists, for example, or if you chose comb coils. Just by the nature, I believe, and I've said this in other videos, but comb coils are typically the quickest starter method to mature, and then two-strand twist also are way quicker than braids because, as I was mentioning in this initial video with Braidlocs, they are wonderful for keeping your hair stretched because, your hair is stretched and it's longer and elongated. But with that, even if you braid loosely, you're still dealing with your hair being intertwined in a way that it doesn't allow it to expand, which again, if you're trying to maintain some length and whatnot in the beginning, that's great because you get to keep some of that length, but and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But in terms of your locks swelling and budding and developing, the braids are going to take longer to do that than with other methods. If you're doing interlocking, you're doing comb coils, two-strand twist, your hair is going to be able to swell and bud and do things like that a lot quicker than with this method. So that is something that I would definitely consider a con. I considered it a con a year ago, still consider it a con, and still think that it is something to consider if you're going to think about going down the route of getting braid locks, and something that you should think of beforehand. All right, number three, let's skip along to con number three, which is at 212. Con number three to braid locks is that if you do decide that you want to change them or go in and redo them or resize them because maybe you want them a little bit smaller or maybe you want them a little bit bigger, because the installation takes a long time to do, obviously undoing them is going to take a long time to do. Now, any type of all right, so this one is twofold, and I'm not going to play the whole thing, just to, like I said, paraphrase, summarize it. So the first point is the long installation is a con. Um, and then the second point to that one is that it's not a quick thing to undo. So as I was saying in the video, if I had continued to let it play, any type of microloc is going to be a long installation just because, you have several hundred, depending on the thickness of your hair and how big your head is and stuff like that and the density. You may have anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've seen up to some people having 800 or 900 locks on their head. And so, of course, when you have tiny little locks, whether you braid them, whether you twist them, it's going to be a long installation. Micro locks, you're not going to find anybody that can get it done in 2 or 3 hours. It's just not going to happen unless you're out here with a really tiny head, and unless you barely have any hair on your head and your hair is just very thin, then maybe you could do a full installation, but I really doubt it. Installations typically take a full day. Sometimes they take multiple days to do, and especially depending on the length of your hair as well, can determine how long it takes for an installation. So braid locks, I say that the installation is long because even though all types of micro locks are long, braid locks are long, just because if you think about it, doing a two-strand twist is typically quicker for most people than doing a plait or braiding their hair. If you know how to comb coil, you're able to pull the comb through and do that coil a lot quicker than you can sit there and braid the hair. Now, I know there's always going to be that person out there that is like, I'm a super fast braider, but for the majority of people, braiding is a longer process than the other starter methods. Excuse me. And then the second point of that, like I said, it's not a quick thing to undo. So I've had many people, flockers, who have come through the comments over this past year that I've been publishing videos on YouTube that have told me, like, that maybe they restarted their journey, maybe they wanted to resize, maybe they wanted to go back and change their grid. So this is all things that you have to keep in mind. If you're like me and you're not worried about your grid and you're happy with the sizes or size that you started with in the beginning, then obviously that's not going to be something that you have to really think about and take into account. But if you are the type of person that maybe you get them installed and you're like, man, these are too small, I want them bigger, or vice versa, these are too big, I want them smaller, or I started out with this type of parting, but now I'd rather prefer this type of parting. For whatever reason, there's so many different things that can, depending on the type of person, change whether or not you want to go and change things. Braids are going to take longer to undo, just like they take longer to put in. If you got 2-strand twists and you're only 5 or 6 weeks in, it's going to be a lot quicker to go in and pull the 2-strand twist apart so that you can start over than to sit there and have to undo 3 strands of hair, or 3 strands, or 3 rows, or whatever you call it, of hair that's been braided together. So that is something that you want to keep in mind, that it just honestly is going to take longer to undo if you want to redo them and change them up in any way. Now, if you know from day one, this is the size I want, I'm doing them myself, I have someone else doing them, they're doing them the perfect size, with all of that, then great. But if you're someone who might want to change it up at some point, then that could be a huge con, the time that it takes with braids. All right. So a year ago, those were the only cons that I could come up with and think of. And to this day, those are still the only cons that I have on the docket that I can think of. The pros for me way outweigh the cons when it comes to starting with Braidlocs. I've been super happy with mine. So let's now move into the pros of why I think it's beneficial to start your locks with braids as opposed to other starter methods. Some bad, there is great things about Braidlocs and things to look forward to. The first pro of Braidlocs is that you get to keep most of your length. Something that's really frustrating with a lock journey for a lot of people is the shrinkage. All right, so there you go. My first pro when it comes to braids, and I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but it is that when you start with braids, you have more length that you keep, Now, any method that you start with, you are going to have shrinkage, and you're going to have significant shrinkage. And the longer your hair is, chances are the more it is going to shrink. That's just part of the journey. There's no getting around that. But what I found is that with braids, because it's more stretched, with 2-strand twists, if you've ever done 2-strand twists with your loose natural hair or whatever, hair texture that you have, they're springy, they're boingy, they're springy, they have give to them, but they shrink up, especially if you're keeping them in and you're washing them, they are going to shrink up significantly. I had a friend who, when she started her locks, she did 2-strand twist and her hair was probably bra strap length when she started them. And that first day they were, but as the weeks went on, they started shrinking up. And within 2 months of her journey, her hair was as short as mine, in this video, when she had her 2-strand twist in. Granted, she could pull them and stretch them, and she could still stretch them down to her I said bra strap, I meant her clavicle bone. She could still stretch them and they still would reach there, but when she let go, they would be short. So with braids, you're able to keep a little bit more of your length. Again, I'm not saying that you're not going to experience shrinkage. You will still experience shrinkage, but it's going to be a lot less than if you use other starter methods. That's a pro, but it also, it depends on you as a person. If you're wanting your locks to lock quicker and look like locks quicker and to lose the initial pattern quicker, then you're going to want to go with the different starter method. But braids will allow you to keep the length longer and to have less shrinkage, because it is a more stretched starter method. So that's a really cool pro for me. And I'm sure a lot of women out there who, if you've spent time growing your hair out, the last thing you want is to have it shrink up to a third of the size that it was when you started. And like I said, it's part of the journey, so it's partially that you just have to deal with it. But if you're wanting to minimize that and optimize on your length for longer, then Braidlocs may be the way to go for you. All right, so going into my second pro for Braidlocs. Number two for Braidlocs is that you can wash them right away. Who doesn't love the freedom of being able to wash your hair whenever you want, how long you want? It's so nice to not have to worry about it, because when they're braided, I'm not going to say that you won't have any slippage or any unraveling, but it's going to be very minimal, and especially... All right, so there you go. Washing them, you can install your locks and wash them on the same day. Now, again, like he said, like I said, depending on your hair texture and things like that, I can't promise that you're not going to have unraveling or any slippage. I have 4C through Z texture hair, so my hair is not coming undone at all. And I was able to wash my hair within the first week of the installation. Never had any issues with bunching, never had any issues with slippage or anything like that. So it's been a wonderful journey. For people who have a more active lifestyle, using interlocking as a retightening method is already a plus, because you're able to have that more active lifestyle, you're able to wash your hair more often, swim. But when you have Braidlocs, because you're not having to worry about the slippage and the unraveling as much as you do if you have 2-strand twist or comb coils, you're able to fully live that active lifestyle and not have to worry. You can go to the gym and not have to worry about, having your hair tied back or tied up with a scarf or anything like that. If you don't want to, you can go swimming. Chlorine's a different story, but you can go swimming in a pool or in the ocean and not have to worry about your hair coming undone. You can go outside in the rain and not have to worry about comb coils coming undone or twists coming undone. So it's a huge pro that from day one you can wash your hair, you can live out your active lifestyle, and just fully embrace the life of lockdom when you start your locks with Braidlocs. And again, that varies with your hair texture, and if you've got larger braids, they're more prone to unravel or come undone than thinner braids, but we're talking about Microlocs and Braidlocs here. So you should be good. Now, if you have texture 3 hair, 3B, 3C, you're gonna have to try it out. Put a braid in your hair, see if it comes undone. Before you go do your installation, you can test this out yourself before paying money for anyone to do it. Put some tiny braids in your hair yourself, run some water through your hair and just see how your hair reacts. Wash your hair, see if they come undone. That way you can test it out before you pay someone to do it, or before you spend the time yourself to do the whole installation. And then you'll know, and you wouldn't have wasted time or money. All right, my number 3 pro on my list, let's go ahead and skip to that time point. It's at 7:56. For starting your locks is because, honestly, at the end of the day, all of the locks mature to look the same. Now, it may take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years for your locks to fully mature. Again, each person's head of locks is different, but the end game is the same for all of the starter methods. And if... All right, so that part, what he said. So at the end of the day, locks are going to mature to look the same. At 2 years in, maybe they don't look the same, because yes, I do still have some braid pattern at the end. So if someone gets up close to me, my locks are going to be more distinguishable as Braidlocs than someone who started with interlocking, or they have Sisterlocks. But once we've hit year 5, year 10, I guarantee you, unless somebody is a loctician themselves, and really, even a lot of locticians probably won't be able to tell, people aren't going to know what your starter method was. People aren't going to know the troubles and trials and tribulations that you went through with your locks. They're just going to see the end product. And so that is a huge pro, I would say, in the fact that even if you start with braids, not even, when you start with braids, they're going to mature to look just like interlocks. They're going to mature to look like 2-strand twist locks. They're going to mature to look like comb coil locks. And like I mentioned in this video, if I had let it play a little bit longer, unless something is wrong with your either installation or with your reties that you or your loctician has been doing, like if you're creating holes and stuff in your locks, that's a different story. But if you're doing your maintenance well, if things are going well with your hair, as they mature, they grow and progress, they're all going to end up looking the same anyways. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which method you start with. You just have to weigh the pros and the cons and which one you think is going to work best for your lifestyle and work best for you. Braids have been it for me. I've loved every single day and step. Sorry, on my throat is dry. I've loved every part of this process and I have had no regrets with it. So I can't speak highly enough of Braidlocs. All right, and then let's go on to the next thing that I have. All right, let's see. That's at 840. Come on now. A lot of people will tell you not to use oil or a lot of product on your locks. But the great thing with Braidlocs is that I'm not saying that you should use a lot of product, but you can use some product. I use conditioner. I use oil on my hair, again, and on my scalp. Some of us have been walking around looking like the Sahara Desert. You know your hair. So if you were walking around with the Sahara Desert scalp and it was snowing all year long, then having locks is only going to further exacerbate that issue. So you can't listen to people when they say, don't use anything on your locks, don't use anything on your... Okay, I still agree. I'm a huge proponent on this channel of knowing your own scalp, knowing your own hair, knowing your locks, knowing what works and what doesn't. I fully believe that you should listen and lean into, if you have a loctician, what they're telling you, but I also believe that it is important to have a relationship and know your own scalp, know your own hair, so that way you can make decisions for yourself. Your loctician hasn't been rocking with your scalp and your hair all your life. You have. So you know if your scalp, like I said, is dry like the desert and you need some extra moisture. My scalp, and actually it's time for a wash. Y'all probably see me scratching, but my scalp is extremely dry, especially around the winter time and months where it's colder outside. And so I cannot go without putting moisture and oil and stuff back into my locks. I make my own DIY oil. It is very lightweight oil. So I'm able to put that on my scalp once a week after I wash, and then I can put it on my locks usually after a wash. And sometimes if they're dry, I'll do a midweek moisturization session as well. But again, and then also I've used conditioner pretty much since the first month of my lock journey. Now I'm not telling you if you have super fine hair and your texture is very loose compared to mine that you should use oil and stuff like that. You have to know what works for you and what's going to unravel your hair. If your hair is very coarse and kinky like mine, then maybe you can get away with using oil and conditioner in your hair. I like my hair to feel soft and to feel moisturized, and for that, because my hair gets so dry and brittle feeling, if I'm not putting conditioner in my hair when I wash and I'm just using a a conditioner that strips all the oils and stuff out my hair, then I get out feeling with like my hair is going to snap off. It feels brittle, so I have to put that conditioner in my hair. I'm not leaving it on for 20 minutes. I'm not doing deep conditioning, but I will put conditioner on my hair and leave it on for 2 or 3 minutes while I'm washing the rest of my body in the shower, and then I'll rinse it out. And I'm telling you, the leaps and bounds of a difference that 2 to 3 minutes makes with my locks and conditioner, it is huge. And then when I go in and put some oil, my DIY oil in my hair, it makes all of the difference in how my locks look and feel. And so I can't talk about that enough. Again, you have to know your hair and your scalp and what works for you. I wouldn't ever encourage anybody to do anything or put anything onto their hair that might jeopardize it or that might mess it up, or that you're going to go to your loctician and they're going to charge you more money because you did something that has messed up your journey. So again, at the end of the day, you have to know your hair. You have to advocate for yourself. And if you can get away with just spraying your hair with water or rose water and it feels moisturized, then do that. There's no reason with Microlocs to do the most. Like, you don't need to go and buy a ton of products and do the most. That's one of the wonderful things about locks and Microlocs, is that it can be a minimalism journey. So if you can get away with doing that, I would say 100% do it. But for those of us who cannot get away with simply shampooing with one of those clarifying shampoos and spraying our hair throughout the week with the rose water or with just regular water, and you need that extra moisture, then you might need to look into go ahead and putting that extra moisture in your hair, and it's okay. Like, my locks aren't suffering. I don't have buildup. My locks aren't heavy. They're not weighed down. So do what works for you. Right, if you are watching the replay of this, I thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that I know that you are enjoying this content, and that, no, hit the like button so that I know that you're enjoying the content. Hit the subscribe button so that you can join the flock. Go ahead and drop into the comments and leave some comments if you have any other pros or cons that you can think of about braid locks. Let me know about your journey, how long you've been on your journey, or if you're considering starting one, let me know. I'd love to get into the conversations and just chat with y'all. Thank y'all for tuning around. Stick around for some more videos that will be coming up on my channel. And if you're subscribed, also hit that bell so that you can be notified when new stuff comes out, because I know that it doesn't always get pushed out to people who are subscribed. So make sure that you hit the notification bell so that you do get notified every time that I put out new content. I love y'all, appreciate y'all, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. And then that awkward moment where I can't